The Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in Colorado Springs has announced its class of inductees for 2024. A special honor that is presented each year is the Ken Stemler Memorial Pioneer Award. And the gentleman who is the recipient of that award joins me, and I'm proud to say a man of whom I think the world and whom I consider to be one of my best friends. Bob Feist is with us. Bob, congratulations.
Oh, Steve, thank you. Very, very honored. Was quite humbled when they called me about that. I was speechless for an announcer.
That's really tough to do with you, Feist. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know
it
that.
is. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
The Ken Stemler Pioneer Award recognizes those who provided groundbreaking, innovative ideas and forward thinking that helped to develop the advancement and success of the PRCA and the Hall of Fame and their missions. Bob, you've had a major impact on so many different avenues of our world of Western sports, particularly obviously in the team roping with the BFI and the Team Roping Journal and so many things that you have done. But you made an interesting comment when the Hall of Fame called you. You said, "Yeah, I knew Ken Stemler." So this was a special honor to you for that reason, I think, wasn't it?
Oh, it was amazing. Ken was, I guess you could say, way ahead of his time. He thought outside of the cowboy world, in a sense that he wasn't a on-board cowboy. He wasn't competing going up and down the road, but he thought he innovated and where pro rodeo could go. And I think Ken just had a lot of great visions that a lot of says, well, what does he know? He's not on the road with us, you know.
Yeah.
But he did know an awful lot, and he guided us. Red Stiegel and I had the honor of emceeing and commentating on the Pro Rodeo Series, or the Winston Pro Rodeo Series. That was one of the greatest things ever got involved with those rodeo teams. It was amazing.
And that was how long ago? I mean, that was something that, people have forgotten about, but maybe they need to remember.
Well, the Pro Rodeo Series went after outside of our basic old sponsors that we've seen for years, and God bless them, Justin and Wrangler, and the same people that had been around, and Coors, and many of those for years. They just kept going after them. Well, Ken had visions. If we put teams together and let outside industries come into it, it would be good for rodeo. And he was absolutely right. We had a Polaroid camera. Jolly Rancher Candy.
I was going to say, I remember the Jolly Rancher team right off the top.
Yeah,
I remember the team sponsored by Candy.
And what was so neat is prior to the rodeo, the contestants had to be in an exhibit area, and everyone had a 10 by 20 booth or 10 by 10 booth, and the contestants on their team would be in that booth, and you could go by them. It was like going to the Cowboy Christmas in Vegas, and you walked through and you went to these booths and you get autographs from their team members, and they were right there at the time. And of course, Coors had a product in there. Winston had, and they had these, and they had a draft, and everyone, they were complaining, well, it's not for the whole membership. It is. If you were good enough, you would make a draft and make a team. And it should have probably continued on. It would have been amazing. But to see the fan base and to be able to meet Steve Kenyon, who's going to be the announcer here today, and Bob Tallman or whoever it was, and they'd sign autographs, and then it would go into the rodeo. Well, all of a sudden they had favorites down there in the arena and people they knew.
Yeah, and that outreach to fans, I mean, we see it all the time now at Cowboy Christmas, but at that time, I guess that was kind of a breakthrough moment in professional wrestling to create that opportunity for fans to get to know their favorite cowboys and cowgirls.
Yeah, and to go by the Polaroid booth and get a Polaroid shot. Everybody knew Polaroids, and for those of you youngins out there, that was a camera you could take a picture with. And this before cell phones now, and you would pull this film right out of the camera and wait a few seconds, take the cover off it, and you had a picture. So it was great. You could bring your kids by there and get a picture with Hawkeye Henson or Donnie Gay or whoever it was.
Yeah, those were the days. Those were the days. I'd forgotten that you did the telecast with Red. That must have been a kick all by itself. The number of times I've had a chance to sit next to Red Stiegel, I will treasure those moments forever.
Amazing. Brings back Zoli Baja days. Zoli was the producer and director on the cameras, and Red and I would go to the events and watch the events live and make notes. And then Zoe would film it. Then the next Thursday we'd go to the studio and we'd do a voiceover on it, and
Hmm.
it was quite the deal.
Yeah. Bob Feist is with us, the recipient of this year's Ken Stemler Pioneer Award. Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame induction weekend will include events on July 11th, 12th, and 13th. Bob, let me ask you about your love for team roping. It is fairly apparent that team roping has been a big part of your life for well over a half a century, with the Bob Feist Invitational just celebrated its 47th annual. Uh, the publications that you started, the Roper Sports News, you love team roping.
Oh, it is a great passion of mine, and it wasn't the first passion of rodeo. Trying to ride steers and bulls in the early years and cows, and that didn't work very good. And then I had a stint in college and in the army. And when I got out of the army, I decided to get back around the horses. And team roping was the one I could see that you could do the rest of your life if you got involved in team roping. So I got into it. And at that time, there was team tying and team roping both. Team roping was the Dally, and that was basically popular in California and Arizona and New Mexico. But team tying was the big thing. And in fact, the national finals in those days was 50-50. And they did that to when team roping finally got in the NFR, that they allowed the dally ropers to have a little edge because they could dally, and the tie down ropers had a 50% edge because they could tie down rope. And that's where the header rope, and he was tied on hard and fast.
Mm-hmm.
And just like steer roping today, and they went off with the steer, not to trip him on the ground, but to handle him so where the heeler could come in, who was also tied hard and fast, would heel, and then they would take the steer to the ground. The header got off, went down, and tied the two hind legs with a string.
One of the so this is Bob just brought this circular to something that I wanted to make sure that I let everybody see and talk about. One of your fellow 2024 Hall of Fame class members is a gentleman named Art Arnold.
Oh
And
boy, yeah.
Art was the 1968 world champion team roper. And
Yes.
everything that I've read about Art Arnold, he was considered to be one of the real wizards of team tying. And he was on the cover of the very first Roper Sports News.
You're right. You're right. In fact, I got an issue. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Show that to me.
this is Art right here, and Art looks like a young man there too. Glenn Franklin on the other side. He was the world champion calf roper. So that was uh, on the first cover. And the first paper was 4 pages long. That's it,
Wow.
on 4 pages. And that was the whole thing. So it was quite a treat to have that. And when I saw Art's name come up on that list, I thought, wow, that's something that would be great to see Art and talk with him. But yeah, he was great at tie down roping. And they always laughed at us pruneys, they called us, the Californians, for tie down roping because, and today we call tie down roping, which used to be called calf roping, but it was team tying is what it was called. And yeah, it was different because if you got off your head horse just late or wrong, and if the heeler only roped one leg, you were going to have a V coming towards you as you ran to that steer. This steer's out here between the head and heel horse, and it would just be a clothesline. If you didn't stay back there far enough or jump that rope, you were going to get clotheslined by that steer and knock over. So it was quite the deal.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though, Bob, is you think back, you mentioned Arizona and California kind of as being the hotbeds at that time. They weren't team roping in Texas way back when. It
No.
wasn't near as big as it was. Our friend Bob Tallman loves to talk at rodeos about the economic impact of team roping on the Western way of life. And
Yes.
I know that's something that you might have taught Bob all those stats for all I know. That's something that you have been an advocate of for years and years and years.
Yes, I have. I always felt that if, not to take anything away from a bronc rider and a bull rider, but if we can get people interested in the horse business and in team roping and good horses, we're not only selling horses. And there's another thing that team roping does is wear out a lot of product. It wears out ropes. It wears out over reach boots, splint boots. You watch team ropers; they have every safety equipment they can on their horses. All that stuff gets wore out, and I could just see a big snowball there in equipment. For a while, I had a publication covering branding pins and team pinning, and it didn't take me but about a year or so to realize that these people don't wear out anything. They ride
Yeah.
the same horse for 10 years, same saddle, same everything. So there's not much product associated with it. On the other hand, team roping had a lot of product, and it had an effort to provide schools, and that's what E.B. Dorsey was one of the first instructors, and along came other ones and down the line. And those were the good old days. And team roping was something that everybody could kind of vision. I think I could do that. And yet you put a rope in somebody's hand and have them try and rope a dummy, and they found out that roping just isn't quite that easy either. So they got to learn how to rope and then learn how to ride. But it got a lot of businessmen involved in it, and fortunately, a lot of those people then got onto local rodeo committees, and that was the idea of the whole thing. And the team roping publications today, my gosh, the team roping journal, my hat's off to them, and a tip of the resistol to them, because they have done a phenomenal job in promoting the sport and the products associated with it. And we were just a little drop in the bucket. In 1968 is when I started. In fact,
Go ahead.
yeah, we used to hand address. Ron Hogan's dead, and his mom would help me. I'd pick up the paper over in the Lodi area, and we'd go back to Santa Rosa and Sebastopol area, and I'd lay on the floor and write the addresses, the people's names I had, to send them a copy of the first issue. And that's where the PRCA comes in again, because I went by the PRCA office and had met Dave Stout, who was the administrator at that time and the manager, basically. There was two other girls in the office and Dave. That was about it. It was pretty small. The office was right across from Bronco Stadium in Denver. And we could pull across the street with our trailers, unload the horses, and walk over and visit with Dave and have a cup of coffee. And he was congratulating me on the paper, and I said, I don't want to compete with Roper's or Rodeo Sports News. And no, he said, I like what you're doing. And so he said, we're just changing ours over to a new addressing system where they were making labels. And we've got all these old stencils, and there was a little square piece of carbon paper, and you would type it in on the address on that, and it would make a stencil, and it went in a box. And these boxes fed through a chute, and then you ran the paper through and stenciled that address on them. So Dave, he said, in fact, we're going to throw all them in the dumpster. If you want them, you can load them up. So
Wow.
I took my tack room of the trailer, which wasn't very big in those days, and hauled all that junk home and figured out how to use it. And so the PRCA had a lot to do with my success in Roper Sports News.
The Roper Sports News at the very beginning, before the Roper Sports News, tell me the story, because I think it goes something like, if you were looking for a roping, you were looking like in the classified ads of the newspaper,
Yeah.
right?
Believe that or not, when you, not in California so much, in Southern Cal, but in Arizona, when you got to Arizona, first thing you did was get the local, I think it was the Republic or the Phoenix Sun or something like that, and you get the newspaper, you go to the classified, and you go down to the R's to roping, and you would find that there were 5 or 6 ropings listed in the classified ads, and it cost those guys $1 to $5 to put this ad in the paper, and that's where you went to rope then, was at those places. So it was funny when I put the paper together. I've got ads in this first issue that roping 3 steers for $5, and that meant $5 is all you were paying, and they'd hold out maybe $1 for the cattle, and $4 went in the pot in those days, and it was affordable. It was fun. I used to say it was kind of a poor man's cowboy pastime where the whole family would go, and for $25 on the weekend, you could have a lot of fun and tailgate parties and things like that. And now it's kind of become a rich man's hobby.
Yeah. Bob, I'm headed this weekend, Saturday night. I'm going to announce a bull riding in Buckeye, Arizona, at
Aha.
the Equestrian Center there, which I haven't had a chance to see it. but I'm told has been remodeled and a bunch of work's been done. In the state of Arizona now, it is snowbird, roper, and barrel racer heaven.
Oh my gosh.
Was it
Uh,
like that then?
no, it was not. No, there was a few ropings around the Phoenix area, and Bill Rohr out in Levine, Arizona, had a big roping called Rohr Ropeathon, and you would rope for a whole week. He'd feed your horses, put them up. He had a big feedlot there, and we'd go there, and they'd have all kinds of different ropings. We didn't have the multitude of ropings that you have today because there was no handicap system at that time. The only handicap there was, it may be that it was a mixed roping, which meant it was a man and a woman together. And then there was 1/40 ropings, and you had to be over 40 years old, and you could rope with someone else. That was about the extent of the handicaps, and they started the century ropings, and they were very good, and you had to equal 100 years of age. And that was basically the handicap system that there was. Um, some they had no barriers. That was a little bit of a handicapping, but so it's come tremendously, and my hats off again to all the producers and people that have come up with new ideas of handicapping systems and different type of ropings, and have got everybody involved in ropings from juniors on. And you talk about team roping not being popular in Texas. Uh, we were at Chowchilla with the BFI 3 years. I went to Las Vegas, and Johnny Smith had started up Smith Brothers Ropes at the time and said, we need to bring this thing to Texas. And Roy Cooper was always traveling with Johnny, and we took it to Texas, and team roping was not popular in Texas then. It was calf roping or steer roping, and that was it. And so it didn't fare real well in Denton, Texas. They built a beautiful arena there, size of Chowchilla. We could score the cattle 35 feet. And that was the whole idea of the BFI, of course, was to take the rodeo out of it and show guys could be good horsemen and good ropers as well. And we could showcase the horses. As an announcer, now I look back to the days to when, because now the AQHA is so involved in rodeo and the horse of the years, and they pay attention to when the Brown Palace Hotel in Denver used to be the home of the PRCA convention, and so Dave Stout said, Bob, you need to come and sit in on our director meeting and see how this works. And Dale Smith was president then, and Dale Smith was a calf roper and a team roper. So some guys frowned upon that because team roping was a stepchild to rodeo. It was not very popular.
Wow.
So when I got in that room, I wasn't looked real high upon by the steer ropers and the bull loggers and the bull riders and Bronco. What's he doing in here? Well, he's trying to promote. Oh, he's trying to promote that dang team roping. So
Wow.
it wasn't always easy, and so Dave invited me to sit in. Dale liked me. Jack Roddy was on the board then, and I was able to sit in on several meetings. Troy Fort took a liking to me. He was the steer roping director, and uh, then C.R. Boucher was in steer wrestling at that time and was on the board. He liked me, and I was able to kind of sit in. And then along come the team roping directors. When team roping got more of an event and they let them on the board, none of those team ropers ever wanted to go to a meeting because that wasn't their deal. So they would call me to sit in for them. And I go back to Mike Beers, Stan Melshaw, and Leo Camarillo, and guys like that were on the board, but they didn't want to go to them boring meetings. So Bob got to go to all those, and it was a lot of fun. So
Let me ask you one or two more quick questions about team roping, and then I want to get into the announcing and some of the other things that you've done. Um, am I right in thinking that back in the day, and I don't know from which city to which city, but there was a stretch of highway in California, probably running through places like Oakdale and places like that, where you'd find the best team ropers in the world?
yes, yeah, that was in the Central Valley, and you get into the Fresno area held an awful lot in Turlock and series. Les Hurties was a world champion, and he was from right there in the Central Valley and from Turlock. Al Hooper was over the hill. He was a world champion in team roping. He was over in the Nevada area, but he'd come and spend a lot of time here. John Papugian was a grape grower and a farmer and had raisins in Fowler. And John got to be, he was a little short Armenian cowboy, and John was an athlete. He could play basketball, was 5'8" or 5'9", and he could play football, and he learned how to team rope. Uh, and he got to be very tough. He roped with the likes of Jimmy Rodriguez and people like that. Went to the NFR several times, and John was instigating a lot of ranching and farming people along that area. The Ferreira boys, Frank Ferreira Sr. and Jr., they were in there. Junior Muzio and uh, Everett Muzio would talk to me about the old time team ropings over in Salinas and King City in that area, and how they'd have these big matches. And this was back in the 50s, and that where they had roped for $250, and that was a lot of money then. So
wow. Yeah. You talked about how one of the things you were trying to accomplish with the BFI and the big long score and the things that you did was really to showcase the horses. I really think team roping horses have been given right now an opportunity to be showcased with the development, not just of all the programs through the AQHA, but the futurities and things like that. Trevor Brazil is spending as much time at futurities as he ever did rodeo, I think.
yeah.
That's team roping horses have been given a whole new venue to strut their stuff.
Oh, it's amazing. I'll never forget. God bless them all. The announcers that are gone before us: Pete Logan, Mel Lambert, and Lex Conley, and Chuck Parkinson. Many of these, they were at a meeting in Sightailing at the Brown Palace in Denver where we were talking. And I went to their meeting and I said, gentlemen, we could really join hands with the horse show world, because there's a lot of people that are at rodeos that they're mixed shows. That, like the Cow Palace was a horse show and a rodeo, and many of the other shows were stock shows, and like Denver had horse show events and rodeo events. I said, if we would pay heed to these breeding of some of these horses and what they have won and their bloodlines, it would be great. And I got laughed out of the room. And they said, all right, big shot, you're going to provide us all the names you get. Yeah, just like we need something more to talk about. We're talking about bulls and broncs here. So we don't need to be talking about them horses. And selling horses and people in the horse business kind of like it, and they kind of buy tickets to rodeos. So I still remember going to that meeting, and I had to tiptoe out of there.
Back in the day.
Yeah, one more word on that same thing. When team roping weren't very easy. When I got the blessed call to go announce Calgary, and I went up, and I'll try and make this story short. Winston Bruce was the director then of the Calgary Stampede. And I always admired Winston as a writer and all that. And excuse me, I had to laugh about this one because we went in there, and the Canadian Rodeo Association was in the room where we were meeting, and so their president told me, "Now don't be up here promoting any team roping. We don't need that. We believe in real cowboys up here, and we don't need to be promoting that event. So get that, and it's in your contract right there. You won't be promoting team roping up here." Yes, sir. Okay, no problem. So they all left, and I turned around and asked Winston, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "I was down at the Calgary Ranch yesterday." "Oh," he says, "say, that's a great operation, eh?" I said, "Yeah, all the bucking bulls and the horses and how you raise all the livestock." I said, "Who hires all them employees?" "Yeah, that'd be me." I said, "Well, Winston, when you hire somebody to work on the ranch, are you looking if they got bull riding experience or they can ride a horse and rope?" "The conversation will go no further. Get out of the room." Those are all good times now. I remember.
I could just hear Winston saying that. That's funny. I've never heard that story before, Bob. That's a good story.
Yeah.
You spent a lot of your life, 40, 45, 50 years announcing. And we talk so much about team roping, but I want our viewers to understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but you spent a few years as one of the voices of the PBR, right? I mean, you
Yes.
were
Yes, I did, and I lost some of my favorite rodeos over it. There was Justin McKee and myself and Mike Mathis, kind of the
Hmm.
startup crew in there that we went, and Randy Smuts was along with us too, and we had some great times with it. But I thought it was, I could see PBR a lot like team roping was. They were trying to promote something new, and of course, a lot of the PRCA thought they were in competition with them, and in a way they were, but they were building a fan base to get, and that brings us back to the BFI. And I hate to mention that because it's not pro rodeo. It never was. The BFI is a separate roping deal, and when I said I was going to start it, a lot of the team ropers said, "Now look what you're doing. You've been selling team roping all along. Now you're going to take it away and you're going to compete against rodeo." I says, "Guys, I'll have it on a Monday and it'll work. I don't want to compete with rodeos. We'll do it on Mondays." "Oh, yeah, big deal. You're never going to get something to work." Well, I did that. In the first 25 years, it was always on a Monday because I didn't want to compete with a rodeo.
Yeah.
And that's what we built team roping up with.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget Jimmy Rodriguez, the world champion, the PRCA many times. Jimmy was probably had as much to do with the success of the BFI as Perry Bigby. And I'll clarify both of those. When when the BFI started, it was $500 entry fee. It was a lot of money. That was
Yeah.
back in 1977. So all the ropers, they would always listen to Jimmy because he could select cattle better than anybody. He knew the herds when you went to a rodeo, and he was a very strong guideline to team roping. And they asked Jimmy, they said, "Jimmy, what do you think about this thing? Is this roping going to work?" Jimmy said, "Well, I was doing the math, guys. If you entered that rope in 5 years, that's $2,500. And in 5 years, if you didn't win $2,500, you don't belong there in the first place.
Yeah.
So what are you saying, Jimmy?" "I'm saying it's a good deal." So they said, okay. So they went along with it. And then after Texas, I wasn't going to have it anymore. And God bless, Perry Bigby called me and said, "You need to have that roping." And I'd been in a bad car accident in Alaska, and Bill Whitmer from Montana, a bull rider, got killed with me. And I was very depressed about the whole thing. And I just not feeling right. I don't think I'm going to have another one. And Perry said, "Oh, you need to have another one." "Well, it costs a lot of money to open the door on it." "What are you talking?" I said, "Well, probably 10 grand just to even think about having it." So he said, "Well, you have that rope and you hear me." So Perry hangs up the phone, and the next day I get a FedEx envelope with a check for $10,000 in it. And I no no name on it, no nothing. So I called Perry and I says, "What are you doing?" "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about." He says,
I'll be
"Have
darned.
that roping, will you?" And so he's the success of the BFI, or the continuation of it.
I had never heard that story either. How proud are
Yeah.
you of the fact that the BFI has been around for almost a half a century?
Oh, I'm very honored with it, and it wasn't me. It was the sponsors. It was the help I had, and there was a place, there was a need for it, and I think the compassion for the event that Corky Ullman and Darren Peterson and Darren's wife have shown for this thing. It's amazing that they have put so much effort into this, and now they have the compassion for it, and they see what it is. At first, it was a roping, but now they see it's totally different roping.
Well, and they've built a whole, I mean, there when you were in Reno, there was a lot going on around the BFI. There was the Perry Di Loretto roping and there were other events, but Darren and Clarky have taken it even further. I mean, BFI
Yeah,
week is now almost BFI 10 days. They added a
yeah,
race and a steer roping to it this year on top of everything else that they were doing.
yes, yes. And Cammy sees that knowledge too as well. That's Darren's wife, and she's very entrepreneurial about reaching out and studying this. And I think it's great that they do have the passion for it now. Originally, when the BFI was a sole event, I had other ropings around it, and at one time, and it was defeating my purpose because the purpose was to have other ropers come watch good ropers.
Yeah,
Just like, who do you think was watching Augusta this last week? It was golfers.
right.
And golfers that wish they could play as good as Scotty Scheffler and the likes of them, but they weren't. But they were watching them and trying to learn something or admiring them. And I think that's what I created the BFI for, was to have other team ropers come watch. I have found when you have a nucleus of other ropings around in there, around that BFI, then you take away some of your audience, which has happened because people rope, they don't do good, they get mad, they go home. I need to practice. I can't go watch the BFI. I need to practice because I'm roping tomorrow and another roping. And it defeated a little bit that way, but it has got so much more. All those people roping around them other ropings, those other 9 days, they all want to be in the BFI someday.
Yeah, I agree. Bob Feist is with us. Bob, you remember when you asked me how long I needed you for, and I said 10 or 15 minutes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I should have known better. You can't put two rodeo announcers together like this and have it go for less than half an hour. But I am so happy for you, and I'm just thrilled that you're thrilled about the opportunity to be recognized this year by the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame with the Ken Stemler Memorial Pioneer Award. And I think it's well deserved, and I think it's well earned. And my friend, congratulations.
Thank you, Steve Kenyon. Thank you for all you do for rodeo.
Well, we try, and we've all. I mean, if I could give as much back to this industry as you have, Bob, I would feel truly blessed because you
appreciate that
so much. This man's voice has graced rodeo arenas across the country for a lot of years. I'll get to see you in about a month. Well, a little
Mule
more.
days, you bet. We get to hee-haw a little
celebration. It's been quite a run at a lot of different events, and congratulations, Bob, and just enjoy the heck out of it.
Thank you. And Tallman will be with us there. We'll let him get in a few words on the side.
Wait, are you talking about the same Tallman I'm talking about? Because I remember it going.
Remember, you and I are paid by the day, and he gets paid by the word.
There you go. That's it. That's exactly right. If you want to come join us in Bishop, California, go to muledays.org because they put on one of the most unique shows in the world, and it is an awful lot of fun. Bob Feist, congratulations on the Ken Stemler Pioneer Award.
Thank you, Steve.